Is Ohio State underestimated? Overestimated? Are they properly ranked? Am I wrong for thinking that a lot of people misunderstand them? Let me know in the comment section below. There's this clip going around of ESPN, people talking behind stage. I think they weren't meant to say this. Their mics were meant to be muted, or maybe they were meant to be talking about Ohio State, but they accidentally got sidetracked and referenced that we can't talk about Ohio State a ton or show a bunch of their film because of we don't have their broadcast rights. That was pretty revealing to me, and it makes sense because I think that for much of this year, so preseason, before I continue, liking the video, watching the video all the way through, and commenting your thoughts down below are the best ways to support the channel, as they help push me into the algorithm, help me to receive a larger paycheck that I can use to reinvest in producing elite analysis for you all. Subscribing to the channel, hitting the notification bell, sharing the video around, and supporting us in other ways that you can find out via the description are other awesome ways to support our operation at College Football with Sam. We are becoming the best. We want to be the best. Thank you all for making that possible. In regular season, a lot of people have mispegged Ohio State. I, from a preseason angle, mispegged them, but I think that I have in large part course corrected on that after they beat Texas, which I predicted to happen, but also after a lot of teams who I had ahead of them completely collapsed and Ohio State remains steady. So, Penn State, I thought they'd be better than Ohio State. Nope. I thought that Clemson was going to be in Ohio State's ballpark. No. I thought Texas would, while I predicted them to lose to Ohio State, I thought they'd be better than Ohio State. No. And here we are. Ohio State's ranked number 1 in the coaches poll, in the AP poll. They were power rated first in S&P Plus and FPI. They are the consensus number 1 team in America. So what's up with people not giving them their flowers? What's up with that? Well, I think it comes from a variety of different perspectives. So the SEC angle here is that people in the SEC, fans or analysts, have really only watched the SEC. You know, I'm more of a Big Ten guy, so I'm more exposed to the Big Ten than the SEC. Trying to branch out, have watched a lot more of the SEC this year than ever before. But still, you know, I'm regionally in the Big Ten. I've watched the Big Ten for longer. I know the Big Ten staffs and players and rosters more intimately than the SEC ones. So I'm going to have kind of a little bit of a natural bias towards the Big Ten. It's my duty to correct that. It's the same thing with these SEC people and fans. And really, the only game they've watched or cared about regarding Ohio State has been the game against Texas. And as Texas has continued to look extremely anemic on offense, the fact that Texas was able to outgain Ohio State, and if they changed like 1 or 2 plays, they win, from the SEC perspective, does not reflect well on that Ohio State team. And you then dig deeper, and Texas, by power ratings, is the best team Ohio State's played by a mile, and that's the SEC perspective. And I have empathy for that. I don't agree with that, because I do think that Texas, in that game, did some things that they haven't since then done, and I think that more so says that Texas was probably a better team in that game than they are now. Could be wrong there. Do understand that perspective, but I ultimately think it's incorrect and imperfect. The Big Ten perspective is the one where I kind of sit in, where I think Ohio State is clearly one of the favorites to win it all. I do think that they have a strong argument to be 1. I think they're definitely top 4, which is higher than I had them preseason. But I want to see them play a complete team before I say that they're number 1 by a mile. I do. And if you're a Buckeye fan and you disagree with that notion, I will point you back to a national champion, actually 2 national champions, who about midway through October, even one of them early November, they still hadn't played really like anyone who could truly test them, especially with hindsight. Those teams are last year's Ohio State team before they played Oregon, and Michigan the year prior, who didn't play a top 5 power rated team until mid November when they had to take the trip to Happy Valley. Now, Michigan did that, and they beat Penn State convincingly, won the national title 15-0. Ohio State lost to Oregon, but made some changes defensively, made some changes offensively, reacting to some injuries. Won out outside of the Michigan game, but ultimately, well, they won the games that mattered the most in the college football playoff, 14-2. They won it all. Those teams, at the end of the day, were number one. They were. But they were not challenged for the early half of the season. Eventually down the road, they proved themselves. But before then, it was understandable for people to ask questions about them. I had Michigan basically number one from start to finish in 2023, but I can vividly remember multiple times saying, hey, if you think Georgia's better or you think Ohio State's better, I disagree with you, but I get it. I do, because Georgia was, reigning national champs, returned alien players. Ohio State had played Notre Dame in the early portion of the year, so they were more battle-tested than Michigan was at that point. And for Ohio State last year, I had them number one at a point before the Oregon game. Kind of didn't get back on that until before the Michigan game, got back off of it again. It was a roller coaster with Ohio State last year. I think all Buckeye fans can relate to that. And then after the Oregon game, round 2, I thought, oh, shoot, yeah, this is definitely the number one team in America. You can also say that with last year for Texas, for example, many had them number one. I remember at one point I thought they were number one. But they weren't tested until that Georgia game, and then Georgia completely humiliated them. So that's my point in all of this. And I think that's the Big Ten perspective, is that Texas was a bit of a test. Yes. Washington, Illinois, yeah. But when I'm talking about test, I'm talking about test for the number one team in America. And you usually don't find out who that is until you have played another team who's in contention for that. I thought Texas was preseason entering that game. I don't think so anymore. Watch the Kentucky game, watch their game against Florida, who just fired their coach, even watch their game against Ohio State, where Sayan, I think, now is clearly ahead of schedule and is a better, more confident quarterback than he was in that game against Texas, independent of opponent played. The Ohio State perspective is that they're the reigning national champions. They're 7-0, they're 4-0 in the Big Ten, and they should be ranked number one because of that. They won it all last year. They're number one in most power ratings this year. They're undefeated. Why shouldn't they be number one? That is a much better perspective than I think a lot of the SEC talking heads perspective is. I think it is not a bad perspective to have. I fall more in the Big Ten camp, and I think that is in part because I'm not an SEC fan. I'm also not an Ohio State fan. Most people, and I usually regret saying this because a lot of people try to turn it on me, but I'm a Michigan fan. I happen to think I'm pretty objective. If you think I'm biased because I question Ohio State being number one, I don't think Michigan's a top 10 team. I think that should be enough of a litmus test for people to be able to, if they're rational, say that I'm objective. Michigan's not better than Ohio State. Doesn't mean they won't beat them, but Ohio State will be favored over Michigan in Ann Arbor, at the end of this year, barring something disastrous happening. None of this ultimately matters. The rankings, the perceived disrespect, or the payment of respect, because if Ohio State keeps winning and they don't lose, then they'll win it all. They'll be the first team to go 16-0. They will have a claim to have an amazing resume and be one of the better Buckeye teams in recent memory and one of the better college football teams in recent memory. And that will be good enough. And that's all said and done. A lot of this is conjecture. I wanted to make a video about it because it's been flying high in Buckeye circles and because, Ohio State fans have really been on this and talking about it. And they've been, they've been defending their position hard of being the number one team in America. So I wanted to come in and say, yeah, like the SEC is giving plenty of disrespect, and I do think that Ohio State I think they would have similar records that they do now, a similar record with a lot of the SEC schedules because they are that good. However, I also wanted to say that when you're interacting with someone who is not one of these biased, the SEC is, always the best, has the best team because it's the SEC type person, when you're not interacting with them, there is a understandable reason to think that other teams besides Ohio State are fighting for that number one spot. If Ohio State was the best team in America by a mile, they would not have the issues they do running the ball, where on the O-line and at running back, there's enough issues there where they're not the perfect team. They're just not. And they also probably beat Texas in a more decisive manner and don't take as long to get going against a Washington defense that is just, good at some things, but at other things, it is what it is. I know they had limited plays in that game, and that was an intentional decision by Day, but look at 2023 Michigan. Like, their offense usually had hotter starts than this Ohio State team using the same strategy with inferior talent, like blue chip wise. So this team has a strong argument to be number one. However, I think that it's early enough in the year to where we can have debate on this. As for the SEC, man, it's sad. Like, a lot of people are saying that, well, Ohio State's win over Texas doesn't matter, or their win over Washington doesn't matter, or their win over Illinois doesn't matter. It's like, come on, guys. Like, Texas is still fourth in odds to win the SEC. They're 12th in odds to win it all. They're power rated top 15 unanimously, top 10 in FPI and most other services. It was a good win. The Washington win was a really impressive win, given it was on the road. The Illinois game, it was impressive how at one point they were leading 20-0. That was impressive. So Ohio State is the best program in college football right now. That is an area where I think there isn't any debate. I do think there's a debate on whether this team is the best team in America. But I will say program-wise, there isn't debate right now as to who the number one program is in America. Like, presently as it stands, it's Ohio State. They have done a better job at reloading than any of the other top programs. Sin, maybe Oregon, but Oregon hasn't won it all. Ohio State has the head-to-head edge over Oregon. Ohio State's the reigning national champ. They have a top 2 head coach who's fighting for one with Kirby Smart right now, and probably Curt Cignetti. It's never been better to be a Buckeye fan. And that is how you tell who the number one program is. Like, not just whose fans are the happiest, but whose fans are the happiest when you adjust for the expectations they have. And Buckeye fans are pretty happy right now, even with their insanely high expectations. And that's because they have the number one program in America, and they have a strong argument to be the best team in America. They're the favorites to win it all right now. So I think that for Ohio State, you shouldn't care what people say. You should, say, okay, yeah, you can make that argument. I'll sit here and see if it turns out to be true. And as for the SEC, like, for people who are refusing to give Ohio State their flowers because of, media rights, that's just saying they don't love the sport enough because they're not watching it. So disregard their opinions. Thanks for watching this video. Make sure, if you haven't already, to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, comment your analysis and thoughts down below so I can reciprocate my thoughts with you in the comment section, and check out anything on these end screens that are up here. Whether it's a recommended video or playlists for teams that I'm talking about in a preview, prediction, or a reaction, make sure to hit the notification bell on those, scroll through them, and watch any suggested videos if you are interested. Thank you for helping college football with Sam become the best and the biggest college football brand and channel on YouTube and other social media platforms. We will reach that one day because of your support.